Welcome to Careers in Accounting. Today, we're pleased to welcome Steve Scanlon. Steve is a Senior Director in Tax Planning at Mallinckrodt. Welcome, Steve. Thanks for taking the time today.
Thanks for having me.
Maybe to get us started, can you talk a little bit about what brought you to accounting? What was your interest level? And then kind of bring us through maybe your schooling and your first part of your career into the role that you are now.
Yeah, so I knew from an early age that what I wanted to do was go to law school.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it was about finding the major that would pair well with that. I took a high-level course in accounting in high school, and there was aspects of it, the logic, the structure of accounting that really appealed to me. And so then when I started with the accounting degree, or on my accounting degree at SLU, what I found I took a couple of basic entry-level like tax courses, and that really kind of that started, the direction I would go with my career. So I still knew I wanted to go to law school. I finished up my degree in accounting, and I went to Mizzou Law School. And there they had a tax certificate program. And so I was able to get an in-depth. I took, they offered multiple tax courses, partnership, corporate, individual. They had tax planning, tax research. So there was just a number of different. I kind of inundated myself with tax courses when I came out, when I was in law school. And then when I graduated, I was looking for, opportunities with tax, but I'd had an internship, between my second and third year of law school, and it was with a regional accounting firm, and I found that a lot of the work I did with them, it was interesting. It was always different issues. I felt a little bit reactive. It felt like we were there, we were waiting for there were clients had questions or issues or things that they would call us. We would address their problems. But I really wanted to be a part of something that was more proactive, right? I wanted to be a part of like going out to companies and, sit down with their people and come up with ideas, brainstorming ideas. So that really appealed to me. And that's where the kind of the opportunity I saw with public accounting when I chose to, I interviewed for a job with PwC. I ended up getting a job, an offer in their international tax group. And so that's where I started my career at PwC.
Okay. And obviously you and I met at PwC and worked together for a number of years. And so I'm interested in your take. You obviously didn't stay. You're now in industry and working for Mallinckrodt. I thought you were perfectly made for long-term public accounting up to partner level. But I know that didn't match with your goals at that particular time. Can you talk about like some of the opportunities that you've seen come to yourself and colleagues throughout their time when they're in public accounting, opportunities that come their way by virtue of starting in public accounting?
Right. So I'll start with the opportunities, and then maybe I'll go into why I made my decision to ultimately leave. But so from the opportunities, there's just a wealth of different opportunities in public accounting that I found. And some of the things that most appealed to me, from a really early stage in your career, even with your first promotion, you get the opportunity to start working with people, managing people. This was one of the things that most appealed to me with public accounting was I was able to, you'd start reviewing work, you'd start providing feedback, but you were also getting involved in teaching and developing people.
That was one of your better skill sets.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the coaching aspects of public accounting and working with, and the good thing about public accounting is, the people that you're bringing into the firm are generally high level, high performing people. So, the dynamic there is you're working with really good, high-performing teams.
Yep.
The culture in PwC was also very collaborative, right? You were working with, you're not only working with high-level people, but everybody's kind of working towards the same goal. There's no fighting over projects or disputes like that, which is what I found. I also found that as you went up, in my earlier career, the people were just, I loved how, you would be a great example there were other senior managers when I first started as well. They're just so eager to help you, to teach you, right? So if you just stop in an office, if you have an issue that you have encountered, a difficult technical concept, people are just willing to help, and they enjoy that, right? Stopping into your office, you're jumping on the whiteboard, you're mapping things out for me. It was just one of the more enjoyable aspects of the job for me. So that collaborative culture. But beyond that, there were lots of other different opportunities. I know you were very, I don't want to say pushy, but you were always pushing me to do more, even outside of the firm. And so you got me involved in giving presentations to the St. Louis International Tax Group. I did that maybe 4 or 5 times. And doing that as early as 2 years of experience, right? 2-year guy giving a presentation to people who've been in the industry and been there in their careers for a long time. So that was terrifying, but I learned a lot from that experience. So it was another opportunity.
And get your name out there in the marketplace as well.
Networking.
So I shouldn't have done that.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You get to showcase what you're capable of, and you get to network with people, right? You develop all this big network even outside of the firm, which was great. There's other bigger things, but other opportunities for people within public accounting too that were just very attractive. I know one of my best friends, one of the people that I brought into the firm at PwC when I was recruiting, involved in the recruiting process, and then I ultimately hired him at Mallinckrodt. But as an individual who took an opportunity to do a rotation in our Washington office, and so he spent 2 years working in their M&A practice, getting to work with the brightest minds in the firm, working on issues that, most difficult, complex issues. Like, that's just fascinating to me. So, opportunities like that are amazing. The reason I may have left the firm, and I loved the firm, still love the firm to this day. The reason I left was I felt like, I was getting to work on lots of different clients, and I was getting to see some great issues. But after 10 years, I felt like you were scratching at the surface a little bit, right? You'll get to go in, meet with a client, you get to see an org chart, you'll hear about certain issues, but you don't have the full facts, right? Unless you've worked, unless there's maybe some exceptions to that. But what I found was, what appealed to me, and this was particularly with Mallinckrodt, where I ended up, they were spinning off from it was a medical, a healthcare company that was spinning off their pharmaceutical business, and it was going to be headquartered in St. Louis. One of the big important things for me, was the ability to stay in St. Louis. But then what appealed to me was this company was going to be headquartered in St. Louis, and they were building their tax practice from scratch. And so it was an opportunity to get out there on the ground level and kind of immerse yourself in one company, one set of facts, right? And own a project from the beginning. And I talk about some of the opportunities I've had at Mallinckrodt, which is, we've done a number of M&A transactions, like number of acquisitions really early in the life of our company. We acquired over 10 billion worth of companies and did a number of significant dispositions. But I got to be in the beginning stage where we were brainstorming, coming up with ideas on how to structure an acquisition, how to combine the companies after the acquisition, and in disposition, there's ways you would go about structuring a disposition in a tax efficient manner. And so I got to see these come to fruition, these ideas from the brainstorming stage through execution, and then in some cases, defense, right? We did some planning ideas where they were great ideas. We were really excited about them. We implemented them, and then the IRS came knocking, and then we spent 2-3 years defending this on audit, our position, and ended up with a successful outcome. But you get to see the life of a project being in a company, and I've been there for 11 years now. We've done so many restructurings, different transactions that we've been a part of. And I know that it has slowed down, unfortunately, because the company has had some financial difficulty. It's been in the bankruptcy process for a while now. But those first 8 years were just nonstop. It felt like we were still part of public accounting as much as we were doing from a planning perspective.
So I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask anyway. So in order for you to get to that role, do you feel like it's vital that you had that experience at public accounting first to launch into that new role at Mallinckrodt?
Vital. Yes. Yeah. That first 10 years, really the training that you get in public accounting and just the knowledge you get from all the different issues you see, that really sets the stage and really, you know, that's what we're looking for when we recruit positions is experience in public accounting. It's one of the criteria that we'll always have on our open positions. That's like the ideal candidate is someone that's had that background.
Yeah, it's like branding. It's something you're never going to regret having on your resume.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think one of the things that I find young people, young business inclined students that struggle thinking about accounting as a career is the perception that it's a redundant profession. Perhaps it's your father's profession or grandfather's profession, and you're just doing the same thing you did last year. You're filling out a tax return and ticking and tying numbers and send in the tax return and wait and do it again next year. So when I say that to you, what comes to mind for you?
Right. Well, particularly with my role, but that nothing really be further from the truth. Like I'm just not involved in a lot of the tax return preparation. There is that aspect to our job. We do have a reporting team, but it's more than just the tax return, right? Particularly for me, but even for our reporting team, they're often involved in, if we do an acquisition, maybe I'll be on the planning side and I'll be helping come up with a structure, planning a structure to facilitate the acquisition, how to integrate the companies. But then the reporting team has to figure out how to report that. So they have a role in this process as well. So, I think I think on both sides, it's not the same routine type of processes that you have every year. It's different.
Yeah, and I found that good tax people, good accounting people, financial accounting people are involved in the early stages when something is transformative at the business.
Absolutely,
because
right.
Upper management understands that all of this has a tax effect. All of this has to be reported and be compliant.
Yeah.
So it's just that's you get that energy of being involved on the ground level of a transaction, and like you're saying, you got to see it all the way through past execution into implementation, and then defense ultimately at the end.
Right.
So
no, it's
very exciting.
It's funny you say that because that's a lot of time that's what happens, right? They'll make a decision that an acquisition makes sense, and then they will come to our tax team, and they'll say, "Tell me how to do it. How are we going to structure this?" So we're in there, we're at the table. We're trying to identify additional synergies that help the deal make sense, help it, identify planning opportunities, both as part of the acquisition process, but also after the acquisition. Are there opportunities that we can see that will create tax savings, help provide synergies, and potentially allow the company to, if it's a competitive bidding process, allow the company to, pay more.
Yep. Very good. Can you talk? The industry's having difficulty in getting young people into accounting. It's kind of a national issue, and I'm a couple years from public accounting, but I feel the need for more young qualified people to enter the profession. Yet there are less people doing it. Can you talk a little bit about the next generation and what kind of lies ahead for them with the complexity and all the issues that you have to manage either as a tax professional or an accounting professional? What that means for a young person who does choose to go into accounting?
Right. I think that's a great point. I mean, I agree with you that those are the levels where we have the most difficulty finding qualified candidates. I mean, we're always looking for qualified people, either 1 to 2 years, primarily 2 years, but, even we will go back to, we've started just hiring folks straight out of school, if necessary, because it's so difficult to find that talent at the moment. But I think that there's just all that complexity means job security, right? And it just means there's so much opportunity for young people who are trying to make a decision on where they want to go with their career. And this accounting it provides a lot of potential opportunity, but also stability. There will always be opportunity, jobs, and it. What I'm seeing, the rules are always changing, Jeff. Like every time somebody proposes tax reform and they're suggesting that they're going to simplify, all they do is make it more complex.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just keeping us employed, gainfully employed, and creating jobs for the next generation. So,
and I think when you couple that fact with just the subject matter is ever changing and complicated with the current people that are doing it, my experience at the end of my career at PwC was I would look at the partner group, and it was a bunch of gray-haired, elderly people who had one foot out the door in a lot of instances because they were looking to retire. I did retire early, but I always thought of like, well, where's the next generation going to come?
Yeah.
Where's the next Steve Scanlon going to come from? And with that complexity, business is going to need that.
Right.
And so I think it's just a fantastic career for a young person to get into. And if you're motivated and you treat it as a career, I think the sky's the limit for a young person. Let's talk a little bit about compensation.
Yeah.
That's another challenging issue, I think, for the profession is the starting salaries, relatively speaking, are lower in accounting compared to other business careers. And that I hear is the industry is trying to mobilize around that and understanding that. So they have to react to that if they're going to get more people into the profession. But I would like your thoughts on kind of the near-term compensation for a person who both stays in accounting, is highly rated, how quickly, because I've always viewed it as it's a hockey stick. You might start here, but it goes up both within public accounting, and then you have these kind of life events when you do decide to step away from public accounting as you did and go into industry. So can you just talk a little bit about your experiences and what you've seen in the market?
You really wish that people would just have a little bit longer term view when they're, and maybe that's, maybe this is perfect opportunity to educate people. And it's, if you could just look past that starting salary and it's not peanuts. It's a good starting salary, but the opportunity within public accounting comes in your first, in the first 2-3 years, right? What I've seen and what in my experience was when you first start, if you are a high performing person, if you're a one-rated person, if you are motivated, it's common that you're getting 10, double-digit percentage raises. And so you will quickly move up the compensation ladder by staying in public accounting and investing just invest in yourself. Make sure that, you're doing everything you can and look for opportunities. And as long as you're demonstrating that you're a high performing person, the compensation will take care of itself. And then the big payoff really is when you hit maybe 4 or 5 years of experience, and then you're looking for opportunities. If you're looking for opportunities outside of public accounting, right? Those jobs at that point, there is a premium that's going to be paid for that type of experience, and you see it in the market all over. Companies, these people, it's difficult to find people with those qualifications. As a result, they can command a premium. It can be competitive, and companies will pay for that, right? That experience, and so. It's definitely, just staying in public accounting, you can get north of 6 figures just by your raises within a short period of time. But then when you're looking at a potential industry opportunities with that type of experience, it's not uncommon to see, somewhere salaries getting up around 150 or so. So.
Can you talk a little bit about work-life flexibility?
Yeah.
I think there's a perception as well in accounting that you work really hard in busy season. My mom still thinks I have a busy season, and even as a professor. But can you talk a little bit about how you manage your family responsibilities and your work responsibilities and how you make that work?
Yeah. So I have 3 boys. They're all teenagers now. But when I was at the firm, they were all, younger and much more active, right? And the firm, I found, was very flexible with me, particularly on when I got my work done, right? So I coached all 3 of my boys in baseball. I coached 2 of their teams in soccer, exactly. And so, the flexibility to be able to leave at 4 to try to get to a game, get home and changed, and then to a game in traffic by 6 o'clock. I would do that frequently, but then I would get home, the kids would be in bed, I would turn on my laptop, and I would get some work done at night. Right? You had that flexibility as long as you were getting your work done. As long as nobody had a problem with you having with that flexibility. It was actually encouraged. I found nobody had any issues with that. So that's one thing I definitely appreciated with the firm. That's continued ever since I've been with Mallinckrodt, and now post COVID, we have an arrangement, a hybrid arrangement where we work in the office on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, but we are working from home on Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays. And so, there's a lot of flexibility that comes with that, right? I start my day very early, but then I take my kids to school. I'll come back. Obviously, I'm working. My son just started playing football, so sometimes I'm going and watching him, and his game started 4:15. But then I come back and I'll get some more work done. So it's when you get your work done, and nobody really is watching your desk, clocking you in or out. I've never had any problems with that. From a timing perspective, like you said, on the planning side, in our rules, there really is no busy season, defined busy season. But, sometimes when you have a transaction, if you're working on an acquisition, if it's a deal time, you're going to work a lot more. But then there will also be times where it's not as busy. So,
and that ability to kind of manage your 12 months versus when you're really busy, and then you take advantage at other times when it might be a little slower is really powerful as well. And my experience also was, if you have a good team, if you have good people working with you, and maybe your group is really busy at a particular time, but you need to be off on Friday because you have something going on, that to have that team member that can step up as well and say like, okay, I understand, and I can take on some of that and get that ready for Monday.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
example, can be very, very vital. So I'm interested in your thoughts. Besides just investing in pure accounting or tax technical skills while a student is still in school, what would you maybe provide advice to them on as to what areas to focus on that would get them off to their best start in their career?
Well, I would say always be asking why. Be curious. And one thing that I've found, and I'll talk about it from a tax perspective, but I think this will apply for anything. When I think about a tax rule, you can sit in a class, you may hear the rules. You can deduct interest, on your mortgage. Ask why. Start to get curious. Every rule, there's a reason for every rule. And if you understand why, it's much easier to remember these things, right? So, if you have a rule, you want to understand what abuse were they trying to prevent? What behavior were they trying to encourage? I've always found that's, if you're asking those kinds of questions, that's going to help you remember these going forward. There's a lot of different rules in the tax code. And so just having that kind of background understanding will help remember things like that. But I think that applies to accounting as well, right? Certainly there's rules in accounting. You want to understand the background. What were they trying to encourage when they'd made this rule? So I think that would be one. I also had a mentor of mine who told me once that, when you start your career, you may not have a lot of money that you can invest. So the only thing you really can do is invest in yourself. And by that, I
still say that, by the way.
You still say, good, perfect. I found that very valuable, and I've continued that and I start my day, each day I get an email from a service that provides updates worldwide on developments in tax, right? And so I can see we do business. We have businesses in Germany. We have businesses in Ireland. I know I can monitor that. I see developments in these countries. I take a brief moment to read them. They may not be applicable at the moment, but by constantly reading and staying abreast, you're just continuing to develop yourself, and I think that's critical.
Yeah, and your first point. I've always found that helpful as well, because we obviously dealt with, and you still deal with, a lot of areas that the answer is not readily apparent. It's either vague or the rule's not directly on point with your facts. And that kind of mindset of understanding why rules are written the way they are, they can give you that sense of, this feels a little odd to me,
Right.
a little too good to be true. And having that kind of building that kind of mindset will help you navigate either a new law that doesn't have a lot of guidance around it, or you just have a bizarre set of facts that don't fit. The law doesn't fit real well against those facts. That can really help you
Right.
in managing your risk as well. Okay, Steve, really appreciate you sharing your thoughts
Yeah,
with us today. And
it
this
was
has been
fun.
very, very helpful. Thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jeff.